Today, I'd like to talk about Genghis Khan. In particular, I'd like to talk about the values-driven aspect of what he did. Now, when we think of Genghis Khan, we always think of some terrible, murdering savage. And he did do a lot of very bad things. But actually, he was a very strong leader, and even today is revered by the people of Mongolia as the founder of their country. He also built the world's largest land empire. That was before the British Empire. How did he do it? Well, he was absolutely a leader. Remember that leadership has two or three really important characteristics. The first is it's a values-driven activity. There needs to be a connection between the values of a leader and a follower for things to happen. Maybe eventually the followers become disillusioned and move away from the leader, but there has to be a connection to start. And Genghis really tapped into the values of the Mongol people. Second, leaders need to change things. They need to actually make something happen. And they need to make something happen that the people that are following them really want. And in Genghis's case, it was to unite the Mongol people, to give them a real homeland, and to stop them killing each other, frankly. That was Genghis's leadership approach. So let's explore that in more detail. It's true that Genghis was, in many ways, not a very pleasant person. He murdered people. Some of the atrocities that his troops committed have been some of the worst in history. But he absolutely tapped into this idea that the Mongols were a special people. When he first came to power, the end of the 1100s, the Mongol people were fighting with each other. Each of the tribes were fighting against the others. That he managed to stop. He managed to turn them against the real enemy, which in the first instance were the Chinese. He did that by promising them an empire, but he also did that in a way that made sense to the Mongols. The Mongols, they didn't like dishonest people. They actually tended to trust people. They were quite harsh, but they also were quite tolerant of other religions and societies and cultures. So he put together really a way of thinking about conquering the Chinese that made true sense to the Mongol peoples. There's a story about Genghis which I think says quite a lot. In the early days, when he was fighting the Mongol tribes, obviously the other guys were trying to kill him. And there's a story that one particular soldier called Jebei tried to kill him, shot his arrow at him, missed, and killed Genghis's horse. Genghis's followers obviously wanted him to kill Jebei. This guy was trying to murder their leader. But Genghis's point of view was this. He said Jebei was trying to do his job. His job was to protect his tribe, and therefore he obviously needed to have me out of the way. And I like this guy, I trust him. And he made Jebei a general. In fact, Jebei was one of Genghis's most trusted generals for the next 30 years. Genghis was a very shrewd judge of character. There's another story which says quite a lot about Genghis. When he was expanding the empire towards the Middle East, they came to the kingdom of Khwarazm. Khwarazm was the center of the spice trade. Genghis, not being a stupid man, felt that the spice trade was very important to the economic future for the Mongol Empire. So he wanted to do a deal, didn't want to have a fight. He sent emissaries to Khwarazm, and the Sultan there, Sultan Muhammad, decided that this was really a bad idea and beheaded the emissaries and sent them back to Genghis. Somewhat annoyed, to say the least, Genghis decided himself to lead the army to Khwarazm. Some people say it was 200,000 soldiers. And it was a protracted campaign, but eventually he took over all of Khwarazm. Interestingly, none of the other sultans decided to help Sultan Muhammad. There was no jihad because, as it was stated in many books, Genghis had more Muslims living inside his empire than lived in the Middle East. There was no cause for holy war. It was simply an economic fight. So, what does that say about Genghis's values? he was actually quite practical. He was looking for economic solutions, not just military solutions. He was looking to make sure that his people had a good future. He invented the Pony Express from one end of his empire to the other, keeping things connected. There was only one rule for the Pony Express: you had to let it through. He also came up with a code of law, the Yasa of Genghis Khan, codified laws which were the supreme law for all of the empire. But interestingly, he let all of the municipalities, all of the individual cities, keep their own social structures, even their own money, because he knew that that culture was very important to them. There were just a few laws he really wanted them to hold on to, such as he was in charge of foreign policy. So yes, Genghis was indeed a very controversial figure. He committed some terrible atrocities. But he really tuned in to the values of the followers, not just of the people that followed him in the first early years of conquest, when they started creating the Mongol Empire, but also those years when he had many cultures, many different societies living inside his empire. They lived actually in peace. They submitted to the law, but they lived in peace. Genghis Khan was a very strong leader. He had a very strong will. He was a shrewd judge of character. He was not afraid of fighting, and he committed some terrible crimes, atrocities even. At the same time, he truly tapped into the values of the people, the Mongol people, and the people that he conquered. And it was that, the connection between the leader and follower, connected by values, that was one of the most important ways that he managed to create the world's largest land empire.